Hello, everyone. Welcome back to PayU Edge, a session by PayU to empower businesses with actionable insights. I'm Sanya Arora, your host for the evening, and today we're going to discuss the latest guidelines on tokenization and how your business can adapt and be compliant in the changing regulatory landscape. So, while our audience is still joining in, I want to take a couple of minutes and describe why we're here, right? What do these regulations impact? So, digital transactions, we all know, are at an all time high today in India, and they're still going strong every month. More and more consumers are shifting online, more and more businesses are shifting online. And in fact, the Mobile Marketing Association estimates that the number of online shoppers will increase from 150 million today to more than half of our population. That's more than 500 million by 2030. So that's a massive increase, right? And with this burst in the number of digital transactions, it's necessary to have a few checks and balances in place. And that's what the latest tokenization guidelines are targeted towards. The tokenization guidelines, what they do, what they impact is the safeguards experience that you and I as consumers have become very used to seeing, right? We don't even notice it anymore. It's the experience that when we're shopping on an e-commerce website, we have added items to our cart, and while just about we're about to check out and pay from our payment mode, we see a couple of payment options already saved. And that just makes it so easy for us, right? All we have to do is enter our CVV digit, our 3-digit CVV, enter the OTP, and we're good to go. And this is what enables, honestly, me to shop from anywhere, anytime, while I'm traveling, while I'm sitting in the comfort of my bed. I don't have to get up and fetch my card details. What it also does is it prevents me from entering incorrect card details, which is also a major problem, right? And thus this experience has become so innate in our lives today that we don't notice it anymore. It's an important customer experience. It's something that businesses are relying on. And definitely the new regulations on tokenization, while they're a very big way forward, they're a very positive step in enhancing data security, giving more control to consumers. There's a challenge for businesses in first understanding these regulations and then secondly becoming compliant. And to help us with that, we have Amit Thakur with us. Amit is a senior product manager at PayU and holds more than 5 years of experience working in product across notable organizations like Make My Trip and Flipkart. So, without further ado, I'd like to, start the discussion with you, Amit. While a lot is being discussed on tokenization, and we're seeing articles every day on the latest regulations, can you still take a couple of minutes and explain what the regulations mean to us and the audience, and whom do these regulations impact? I'd like to start from there.
Sure. So basically, RBI came up with a very prescriptive guideline on 7th of September, right, on who can or cannot save the card. So basically, it impacts all the e-commerce companies, all the digital transaction that is being done. What it impacts is it just changes the way how the card is saved at the merchant end, right? So earlier, a merchant was able to save the card at their end, or a payment aggregator like us, where it's saving the cards for them. Going forward, RBI has kind of mandated that the card data could be saved only with the networks or the issuing banks. So that's the major thrust. Apart from that, RBI is trying to make things easier from the customer perspective, that they should be able to find out where the card is stored. They can remove the consent as they wish to. So there have been a lot of guidelines on that part, that as a customer, I should have control on all that data that I have. The last bit was also it impacts our merchants, because some of the data that they were used to getting, that will not be given going forward. For example, all the merchants had the access to first 6 digits of the card number, so that will not be there. So only the last 4 digits of the card number and the issuing bank name is the limited set of data that anybody could store. So this was the gist of the guidelines basically.
So, from what I can gauge, this essentially impacts all online businesses, right? Whether aggregators, e-commerce websites, travel aggregators, subscription
Correct.
businesses. It impacts everyone, right? Like, okay. So, as you mentioned, businesses and payment aggregators were saving this data already. So, what happens to that data that they were
Yeah.
storing?
So for everyone to be compliant, nobody can have the card data stored at their end, which includes us and even the merchants, irrespective of your PCI DSS compliance, right? So post 31st December, you'll not be able to store that data at your end. You can only have limited set of data, like we talked about, where the last word is the card number and the issuing bank name is the only set of data that you can have. Um, in terms of tokens that you are going to store going forward, those has to be either the network tokens, which you would be hearing something like Visa token or the Mastercard MDES tokens, or an issuing bank token. So these are the only set of data that you can have. So to be compliant, you'll have to get rid of all the sensitive information that we have stored at our end.
Okay. Okay. I think massive work to be done for all businesses. And I think what this means is we all need to, integrate with payment networks like Visa, MasterCard, like you said, and even banks, right?
Mhm.
The HDFCs and the ICIs of the world. So, PayU recently announced the launch of its token hub. Can you brief our audience about it? What is it, and how is it enabling businesses being compliant?
Sure. So as you said, right, the, if you look at the regulation, there looks to be a lot of work to be done. And technically, anybody can go and integrate with someone like Visa, Mastercard, or integrate with the bank. But it's too much of hassle, too much of work because you have five networks, you have more than 20 issuers in India. So we built PayU Token Hub to kind of create a solution which works for each kind of merchant, right? Like somebody who is using PayU's hosted checkout and they don't want to get into the whole integration bit, there is no change at all required for them, right? So you can continue using PayU's checkout services, you'll have the safeguard experience without you needing to make any change in your code base, right? So that is first thing that for smaller and mid-sized merchant, we have made it completely seamless, no change at all that they need to do. The second bit on the other merchant who have their own hosted checkout page or who wanted slightly more control on the data, there's a we have came up with the two options, right? So a minimal change, basically one line of code change that can help create the network tokens and the issuer tokens for you and save the same. And the other is for large merchants, right? Or somebody who wants to have a complete control on how the tokens are created, how it is saved, and so on. We have created with come up with an option where the complete control is given to the merchant. So you have all the access to all the APIs, and you can manage everything on your own. So we kind of came up with a view that there are different kind of merchants. Some merchants might, to the extent possible, will try to make things easier for them. And yeah,
Okay, so I think that's useful to know that, there's some solution for everyone depending on the kind of tech resources different businesses have, given the kind of investments they want to make. So I think that's comforting. But can we take a step back and still just maybe within a couple of minutes simplify what the PayU Token Hub is, right? Like, why should
yeah,
a business even adopt for a PayU Token Hub? There are, given the regulations, so many fintech companies are coming out with their own tokenization solutions. What's so unique about the Token Hub? How does it work?
yeah. So first and foremost, I would say where we differentiated the PayU token hub from other offerings is we wanted to support both the network and the issuer tokens from the start, right? So while all the solutions in the market today offers the network tokenization, which is Visa tokenization service, Mastercard token, digital enablement services, and so on, we took a stance that we'll be supporting both the network and the issuer token going forward. Now, just to elaborate on this, why do you need issuer token? So, as an industry, we had made a lot of progress in terms of direct integrations, the express pay, and all those kind of flows. So, just to simplify, these are the flows which basically gives you a better success rate. Now, to have those flows working after the new tokenization guidelines come in, having an issuer token becomes kind of an important step that we need to do. So we wanted to support. That's the reason we supported both issuer and network token. At the same time, supporting both of it, we still abstracted out the changes at the uh, merchant end, right? So you continue to use the PayU token. You leave complete handling of which token to use when, how do you store the token, and all the backend processes to PayU. You basically don't need to get into that. However, we create both. We optimally use it depending upon which will give the best success rate to the customer. So that is one bet. Second thing which I wanted to highlight is we have a very close partnership with our sister concern Webmo, so which is the ACS provider to almost 70-80% of the banks in India, and they have a very close working relationship with the issuing banks. So, which is where we are trying to leverage as our partnership with Webmo to help build better flows. So. Sanya, if I have to take a step back, right? So when you're talking about a tokenization platform, you shouldn't be looking at 1 month view or 2 month view. Yes, there are a lot of churn, but it's for the good, right? But the platform we have envisioned is not just from supporting the network token. As I said, we want to support issuer token, but later on, kind of move into a direction where we offer the tokenization not just for cards, but other payment instruments as well. So that's one of the key features. We built Vault, saying that it's work for card, but it will also work for your VPAs, net banking, wallets, and that kind of opens up larger opportunity, right? So, I mean, just to give an example, I'm sorry I'm taking more time, but
It's
just
okay.
on that. Today, when you're doing a net banking transaction, right? So you are redirected to the bank website, which is where you capture the net banking credential to proceed with the transaction. What if I'm able to tokenize the tokenize your net banking credential? I can provide a seamless experience where you don't need to do a redirection. That has a better customer experience, has a better success rate. Similarly, the tap and pay or the Visa Safe Click, people would have heard about that, where you don't need OTP below 2000, now rather 5000. So all those possibilities come in. So when you're taking a decision on tokenization platform, while what PayU is doing is kind of making it future proof for you, where not just the immediate network token comes in, but all other future optimizations are baked in without the merchant actually needing to make any changes at their end. So, yeah.
I think you've touched upon a very important point, right? I mean, like I mentioned during my introduction, as we see digital transactions rising, checks and balances are going to keep coming into place, and that's very important. And it's important as a business to invest long term and not just think about short term, think about meeting the current deadlines, and it becomes very important to think of the holistic
Having said
experience
that, just to
for,
interject you,
yeah.
we will still make sure that our merchant meets the deadline. In fact, before the deadline itself, so that they get an overlay period where the customer who are repeat customers are able to actually save their
Sure.
card going forward as well. So yeah, I'm saying that that's important, but also it's important to keep the long-term view.
Yes, no, definitely, definitely. And it's that long-term view which will enable businesses to grow in a sustainable way, because sustainability a big is a major factor, right? So I think it's important. And I think it's good to know that PayU is helping its clients meet the current deadline while keeping a long-term view in mind. So just from a customer experience standpoint, businesses have to comply with these deadlines by January 1st, 2022. What about customer experience? If I, as a business, integrate with PayU Token Hub, is my customer experience impacted?
Yeah, not much, frankly. If you think from, it's actually good from the customer, right? So what will happen now is the consent has to be explicit. So far, like most of the places you would have seen, it was an opt-out model. Like by default, everyone was saving your card. That cannot be the case going forward, right? So you cannot have a default checkbox saying that I'll save the card. It has to be customer explicitly giving you consent that I'm opting in to save the card. So that's majorly what change will come in from the customer experience perspective. In fact, on the transacting with the saved card that you talked about, like it enables you to do shopping, it actually becomes better because earlier you were supposed to enter the CVV, right, for doing the transaction. Going forward, that will not be required. So in fact, you just select the card, and proceed with the transaction. You will directly go to the ACS page, enter the OTP, and you're done with it. So from customer perspective, it becomes much easier. The other thing, like we briefly touched upon on the customer consent management, right? So every merchant, or in case of merchant using PayU page, where PayU is building all this stuff for them, is the consent management, right? Like you might have given a merchant a permission to save the card, you might want to revoke it sometime later. So those modules needs to be built. So as a customer, for me, it will become very easy to see where my cards are saved, and if I want to remove the card storage, I can do that.
That's fantastic. I think I would like to see, where is my data stored today. I think I have also forgotten so many sites I've stored my financial data on, and I would like to see and control that fully. So I think it's definitely positive from a customer, as an individual customer. And I think it's comforting to know that even as a business, my customer experience will not be impacted. So I think that's a comfort to businesses to opt for PayU Token Hub. Another question, Amit, that we've been facing a lot from being PayU, we've been seeing a lot from the businesses with us already, is that a lot of services today are reliant on a business being able to identify whether the said card being input by me is a credit card, debit card, international card, such as offers, EMIs, loan criteria. A lot of these things are built upon this identification
Correct.
and are core to a business model. So how can businesses still continue to run their run these operations seamlessly?
No, you actually touched upon a very important point, and honestly, some of it is still being resolved at the ecosystem level, right? So, no, but most of the flows will continue working as we know it today, right? So, for example, we today use BIN to identify whether it's a CCDC or international or domestic card or EMI enabled or not, and also you do the routing basis the bins. Going forward, you can have a transaction which is initiated with the card where you still have the bin number, or it could be a transaction initiated by a token where you don't know the actual bin. We have been working with the networks. We'll be able to provide that mapping to our merchants, saying that this particular token bin maps to which particular card bin. And once you have that information, everything else will continue working as it is. The second bit on the important bit that you touched upon is the user identity bit. So right now, Sanya can do 10 transactions on PU with on different merchants, and she can have 10 different tokens. But for the risk rules, offers, and others, it's very important for us to know whether all this 10 is Sanya or someone else. So as an ecosystem, we have been solving that, and there are options available now. So something called payment account reference, which acts as a unique identity across different tokens. So not to worry about that. Basically, just as all these flows will be supported, some of it there will be short-term pain because some of it is still being figured out, like EMIs, the whole file thing. But from merchant perspective, as for your merchant, don't worry about that. All those flows will be supported, and things will continue working as it is. So we will make sure that that happens.
Okay, I think glad to know. Very technical, but I think it's just like I just keep mentioning, it's great that we are solving for these core business problems as well. And given the recency of these guidelines, and given the entire industry is trying to adapt, it's important to have solutions at least work in progress so that we'll be able to help our partners meet the immediate deadlines and still
Right.
have seamless operations in the long term. So I think that's great. So is there anything else you would like to add from your perspective on what else PayU is doing with respect to this specific guideline or this specific product to enable businesses better? Or
No,
I
so
have one more question for you.
no, sure, you can carry on. I mean,
Okay. So, while we've already touched upon how positive this is for customers, how positive this step is for customers and data security and data privacy, and while it's a short-term pain for businesses, how do you see this impacting transactions and the business ecosystem of India, let's say over a very longer term, right? Over a long-term
it
view,
would
over
be
the next.
positive. So as I said,
Yeah.
right? So see, it's a short-term pain. It's kind of a disruption to the scale of when we had 3DS implemented in India, right? But over a long term, I'm actually quite bullish about that because what happened before this, right? So networks were offering the tokenization service for a long time, but in India, the adoption wasn't that great. Now this comes as a push, which not just makes transactions safer, but also enables us to have more optimal payment flows like tap and pay, don't enter the OTP, right? All those kind of flows becomes possible in the future, right? So from that perspective, it's going to be very good from a long-term perspective. It's actually beneficial for the whole ecosystem, including merchants. So they don't need to worry at all about all this because things will stabilize in a matter of 6 months, right? So after that, this is actually going to be better from their business perspective.
Okay, fantastic to know. So these are all the questions I had. I would ask the audience that if you have any questions, please post them in the comments and we'll pick them up. Any questions we've received till now, Mansa? Okay, I think we can just wait for a couple of minutes for the audience to post their questions.
Sure.
What would so we have a question from Sachit Galhotra. What would happen to already saved cards?
Yeah. See, if we don't get the customer consent, the card cannot be transferred to the after 30, cannot be used after 1st January, right? But having said that, say you as a merchant go live on 30th November, for example, right? And you are going via PayU, which is already live with Visa and Mastercard tokens. If within that period the customer comes in, gives you a consent, and you do a transaction, those card can be taken over after 1st Jan as well. Because this time when the customer comes in, gives the consent, and we create a Visa or Mastercard token depending upon the card, that can be used after 1st January as well. But bottom line is, if you don't have the consent and you don't do an additional factor of authentication, you'll not be able to migrate the card. I hope, Sachin, that helps answer your question.
Yeah, if you have any follow-up questions, you can again let us know in the comments.
Okay. So while we wait for the question, so just wanted to use this opportunity to tell our merchants, right? So irrespective of whether you're using PayU or anything else, don't worry too much about it. There's a lot of noise on this right now because the deadline is super steep, right? There's no question about it. Within December 31st, we have to comply. All the banks have to comply. The backend changes have to be done. Everyone is working on that. So irrespective of whether it's card payment, it's EMI, or it's subscription, all of those flows will work. You will not have to make many changes unless you want to, right? So if you don't want to, you can continue using PayU tokens as it is. You will be compliant, and all the flows will be supported. So just using this opportunity to make sure that we are all will be able to comply with all the guidelines without impacting your business. So just want to give you that comfort. Um,
We have a follow-up question which says, if the customer doesn't come to do a transaction or give consent, would a merchant have to delete the card details?
yes, Sachin, that's absolutely correct.
Sorry, but you have to. Yes. Any other questions? We have a question from Kester. Does the onus rest on the issuing bank or on the card networks to ensure
So
tokenization?
okay, so as per the guideline, both the issuing network as well as the issuing bank can tokenize the card, right? So, for example, you say a customer has or STFC Visa credit card. So either Visa can tokenize the card or STFC can tokenize the card. Both of them can do. So it's not one versus another, right? So RBI has given that flexibility that both the networks and the issuing bank can do. What it means is Visa cannot tokenize a MasterCard card, like what they can do outside India, right? But in India, they cannot. Only the issuing bank can do that, or issuing network can do that. Similarly, STFC can tokenize STFC cards, but not of any other bank. So the entity which has the skin in the game is the one tokenizing the card. I hope that helps answer this. And coming back to the honors, Kesta, I'm not sure that I got that correctly, but it's an on-demand service, right? So that's where either you as a merchant either directly work with the networks or issuers or via payment aggregators like us, where after getting the customer consent, you create a transaction by calling this networks and the banks to create a token. So it's an on-demand service provided or facilitated by aggregators like us.
We have
Uh,
another question. Okay,
yeah,
would you like to add anything, Amit, to your answer? Or
yeah.
should I move to the next question?
No, we can move to the next question. Kester, if you think that there are any additional questions, just let us know. We'll be happy to
Yeah.
have. Yeah.
We have a follow-up question from Sachit, which asks, are these flows available on PayU Global Hub or India-specific integration?
So this is available at both the places. So PayU Global Hub or the Zeus that we talk about, both have those flows available. Uh, India specific, we have already published the specs on PayU devguide.payu.in. For the PayU Global Hub as well, Visa and Mastercard flows are available. You can check their website for the API details. Cool.
Oh, thanks, people, for the positive comments. It, yeah.
Okay. Sure. Mhm. Cool. So yeah, I mean, just on this part, as I said, from the we have a lot of international merchants as well, which are integrated by a PayU hub. We will be supporting tokenization there as well. Visa, we are already live. Mastercard is already in progress, and others will be supported as well. MX and the Rupee is in progress, right? Just to give you guys perspective in terms of the network readiness, Visa, Mastercard, Rupee, MX are in a readiness state, whereas Diners hasn't published any of the API specs yet. Uh, we do think that Diners might be going ahead with HDFC because that's the only issuer in India. So maybe the issuer tokens is the way we'll go for Diners. Uh, our readiness, you guys would have already seen the press release that came up. So the API specs are published. You can go ahead and reach out to the camps if in case you have any queries or drop in a mail to our care. We should be able to happy to help you over there. So yeah,
I think even for businesses not with PayU, just drop in a line to us at
yeah.
any of our
So
channels and we'll be able to help you out.
yeah, in fact, I actually missed adding that point, right? So from PayU perspective, the vault solution that we have built is completely decoupled from the payment gateway business, right? So it's not like you can use the vault only if you're using the payment gateway, and vice versa, right? You can continue using payment gateway without using the vault. So as a service, is decoupled, right? So vault is a standalone service in itself, which helps in tokenizing, detokenizing the card. It in no way affects your autonomy in terms of PG selection or where you want to process the payment. So that's a completely separate workflow in itself. I mean, we'd be happy if you use both. But as a service, they are standalone. They work independent of each other. And getting into one doesn't automatically bound you with another. So you can continue using PayU token. At the same time, you can use this token and there will be APIs exposed so that you can use the same on another payment aggregator as well. So yeah, I guess we missed this point. So I just wanted to clear that out. So payment gateway and payment vault token, PayU token hub, these are standalone services. So it doesn't bind you in any
I
way.
think I think these are very good, important points. So I think if there are no more questions from the audience, I'd like to wrap this up and just talk about a couple of important things that were discussed, before we take an end for the day. Essentially, what you said, Amit, is that there is, okay, there are more questions coming, but I'd still like to summarize our discussion for the benefit of our audience. This is a very big positive step in the long term, like you said, right? And what PayU Token Hub is, it's a decoupled solution, like you just explained. And whether a business is with any payment gateway, they can still opt for this and be compliant within the guidelines, within the timelines stipulated by the RBI, right? So I think that's very key and that's very important for businesses. What a couple of unique things that we are doing as PayU is integrating with both network and issuer tokens and ensuring all payment modes are covered and not just cards to make sure this is a future ready solution. Another important point I think we covered is the fact that a lot of these business models, which are reliant on saving details, like we covered offers and EMIs, like you mentioned, they won't be impacted at least in the short term, and we'll figure out a way in the long term to take care of these problems. So I think it just as way forward, I think it just gives a lot of clarity to all of us, and it also explains that we as the entire industry is adapting. So it's just
Yeah, I
we'll
mean,
figure it out. Yeah.
yeah, basically, because if you think of it,
Yeah.
EMI was one of the areas which would have been negatively impacted
Yes.
because it's an offline process. Yeah, and I can confirm that most of the banks we are resolving it, that EMIs will continue working. So yeah, as I was saying, that looks like a short-term pain, but we'll be able to ride on top
Definitely.
of it and make it better in the future. Yeah.
Definitely. I think we have a follow-up question from Sachit again. Do you think there'll be a big impact on the overall customer transactions and volumes? As a customer would have to make a lot more effort to do a transaction, would UPI stand to gain in the mobile-first environment? I think that's a very good question.
Yes, Sachet. But frankly, if you look at from the customer experience perspective, it doesn't change a lot. In fact, this is a classic case where things would be better from the customer perspective, as we explained, right? So, see, you put yourself in the customer's shoe. Only two things you're doing. First time when you are tokenizing the card or when you're saving the card, you are giving the consent. That is completely onto you. That's just putting a checkbox basically, right? Once the transaction is completed, everything happens in the backend where the token and everything is created. Next time you are doing a transaction, in fact, it becomes easier for you that you don't even have to enter a CVV. You're just clicking and just landing on the ODB verification page, right? So from customer flow perspective, it actually becomes easier. But I get your essence. There are a lot of network calls being made in the backend, so it might impact the latency. That looks like because there are a lot many calls that are being made now. Having said that, we don't. I mean, at this point, it's too early to comment on what the latency's impact would be. Uh, but don't think it would be that tricky to say. Coming back on the UPI part, we do. I don't think so. As I said, the experience is actually getting better from the customer POV. UPI in itself is growing, right? So I don't see this will be correlated. I mean, there is no causality here, while the correlation might be there just because of the how UPI has been growing, right? So yeah, I mean that's what my take is.
Okay, if we don't have any more questions, do we have any more questions, Mansa? Okay, so if we don't have any more questions, I think we can call it a day. I'd like to thank you, Amit, for taking out time for this event and helping us all get more clarity on what to do next as businesses. Like Amit mentioned, if you're looking for a tokenization solution, you can reach out to any of PayU's contact details and we'll help you out. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. You posed some very good questions, and we hope you got some more information on these new guidelines. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.